Rat-a-doo-doo-doo-doo. 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 Retraction.
Wow.
Welcome to Retraction. I'm your co-host, Antoine.
I am your co-host, Jamie, and we are reversing course through discourse. A friendly reminder that at Retraction Media on YouTube has new uploads every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. While you're on YouTube, please subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment on our videos. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay up to date on our latest content. Follow us on Twitter at Retraction Media and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, and more to listen to those full episodes. Today, I, Antoine, am going to cover the forward party. What do you got on your end?
Ooh, the forward party. Okay. A little Andrew Yang action. It's been a while since we've talked about that.
Oh, is it the Yang Gang? Is that how
Yeah, I think Yang Gang was when he was running for office. I don't know if he does the Yang Gang thing, and I think that he dropped the math with all the negative feedback he was receiving.
Yeah.
Being a little what is that word where you playing into a stereotype? Well, anyway, that's what it was, playing into a stereotype. On my end, I am updating us on AI art because I found an artist online that had a very interesting opinion on the whole AI art fiasco and the positives and negatives with regard to that. And I also might have a small little an appending piece to our last episode that had to deal with the idling and the bounty hunting with regard to New York. So it's just a small little thing that a listener reached out, sent an article through along with their thoughts, and I was like, all right, we can hit that real quick because that's we could hit that up, and that's what's going on in my neck of the woods.
Two callbacks to previous episodes. Now I do have to ask because I had a flash in the pan addiction to this AI art that you had sent me. I had no idea there were a limited number of tries. I ran through all of my tries within like an hour and a half at like midnight. I stayed up late to do it because it just got me. Is there another program out there where I can get free tries to do this?
Yeah, there are a few. I think there's two now.
But like good ones. Because I did find I found some others and they were trash in comparison.
Okay. The other one starts with an M. I think the guy that I'm talking about here mentions that one in his YouTube video. But
yours was what? Mid-Journey? Is it
Mid-Journey. Yes, that's the big.
Well, that's the one.
That's the most famous.
That's the one you sent me.
Yeah.
And I exhausted all of my uses.
I only send the best. So
that one is good. That was fun. That was fun. Well,
that's how they get you, because otherwise, how are they going to monetize?
I don't want to pay.
No one wants to pay. That's the crux of the internet. No one wants to pay. You become the product. Here we're going to exploit you because you don't want to shell out anything out of your wallet. So you're like, I will give you my life. I'll give you my.
But you know what would be different?
My income statements?
No. I will
give you $5 a month. I
want to be able to pick what data I pay with.
That's interesting. That's an interesting one.
Right? So I'll give you what? My gender, my geography, I don't know. Do I get to pick my demographics, my psychographics? Like, I want to say these are the things I'm willing to give up in exchange for a free service, seemingly free. What can I buy with this data?
I think that's fine if you do not exist within a capitalist framework. I think that what you're suggesting is fine if a company says, all right, this is the product we're creating. This is the level of profitability that we want to ascertain in order to continue keeping the lights on, employing X number of people, and basically existing because we just enjoy making this product. But that's not how companies work. The profit has to grow at almost exponentially. So you offering up a piece of the data that you're comfortable giving up is irrelevant because at some level, they're going to have to ask for more. Otherwise, profits cannot continue to rise. So I love the little vanilla, beautiful, idealistic jumping around on a purple field of clouds that you've just you've kind of given the people, saying, you know what, I'll let you know my gender. Here's my gender. This is my payment. They're going to ask for a pound of flesh because at some point that pound of flesh is going to be necessary to give back the money to the stockholders and anyone else who's contributed to this very fine enterprise known as a private company. So that's what I have to say about that.
All right.
Why don't you hit up your topic? Go for your topic, and then we will jump back around to the AI.
All right. An article from The Atlantic titled Why I Joined, Then Left the Forward Party. The article will be listed in our sources section of our YouTube episode description if you're interested. So the purpose of this article, I think, was to bash the party. I was reading it and I was kind of waiting to pull some other stuff out of it. And I was like, wow, this person just really doesn't like this party. And they go into many reasons, maybe pet peeves of why that is. And I'll cover a bit of it for context. But my take is kind of hard to explain without getting into it. The author is annoyed with what the party is doing and why. I'd argue that I disagree with the why the party is doing something, but I actually am very intrigued by the what, by what they are doing. So I'll get into this. Okay. So to start, the author describes how he doesn't feel at home as a Democrat, an independent, or Republican. So he joined the Forward Party to get a third party on the ballot in North Carolina. Okay. The dream he bought into is simple. The Forward Party would bring former Democrats and Republicans together to offer an alternative to extremism. And I think an apt follow-up to that statement is the best quote I found in this article, which is, the desire to fix the political process doesn't necessarily convey the ability to make change happen. Just because you want to do something doesn't mean you can. So it's safe to say that the author's expectations were not met. That is very clear for anyone who decides to read this article. In his eyes, the local chapters were not well organized. There was no org chart. And these are all things that he said. This is why I know this. There's no org chart, right? There's no hierarchy to this organization. There were no purpose.
Wait, what is he saying? He's saying Andrew Yang is just one of the people. He's not.
No, he's saying that there's no accountability. No one has a remit. Right? It's just like this blob. It's whether it's by design so that people don't get in trouble, or just not, like I said, not well organized. No one wants to take on responsibility. Maybe it's not their day job. I don't know.
So you're telling me that if I wanted to start a new party and then I go and cherry pick people with competing ideologies from across the political spectrum, bring them all into a little pot here, that they don't just come together. You're telling me I'm going to have a Peter Pan shadow moment where I'm chasing a shadow, trying to get it to come back together with butter or glue? Is that what you're saying?
It goes back to my original.
Are you saying it's like herding cats? Having all these people together who do not necessarily agree?
I am glad you're saying all of this because, like I said,
this is a shocker to me. I'm as shocked as he is.
I see where he's coming from, and I see what you're doing here. But you're framing it in such a way that it's like, well, who's surprised? But it's still bad. And like I said, I don't agree. So let's just say what you said is true. I don't agree with that's why there's no organization. But again, the fact this no organization principle, if we can even call it that, interests me, and I'm going to get to that. So what he went on to say after the no org chart is that there's no purpose-driven meetings, right? There's no meetings with, this is what we're here for, here's the agenda, and this is what we want to get out of it, right? If anyone has a job, usually you have those types of meetings. Apparently, it was just a collection of town halls where everyone spoke their mind, vented, and nothing really ever got done. And he said every time a question was asked.
Are you saying that if you bring together people with competing ideologies and then just give them an open floor to talk about what it is that they want to get done, that there won't be a united consensus right off the bat?
He's saying
this is really perplexing.
He's saying that no, but you're saying that you're surprised in that format. He's saying that that shouldn't even be the format. The format should be more structured.
Okay,
shouldn't be open.
I'll give him that.
So, but I hear you. Keep chiming in. I hear it. It's all good. Listen, I'm very interested to see what your take is going to be on my take.
Yeah, sure.
This will be good.
I just think that it's funny because this continues to butt up against the all too common criticism of the Forward Party, where Andrew Yang will stand up and he will talk to a reporter, someone who's very well versed in the political landscape, and they will come back with a very simple question, usually, which is, so what is it exactly that you want to get accomplished? And then he just sort of backtracks into kind of a non-answer. But let's see what else this person has to say.
So to that point, every time a question was asked around the party's stance on issues and organization, the default answers of the local chapters were that the national organization is working on it, and candidates and voters needed to decide for themselves. So a non-answer, right? And now the author sees this as a bad thing. And for those of you who can't see Antoine's face, he is laughing and smirking. right? And maybe it is. Maybe this is a bad thing, but it did stick out to me. If the author left the Republicans to become an independent and then left them to register as a Democrat and then became a forwarder, I don't know what they call themselves, but I thought a forwarder.
You know what? You might have just helped them out. They might actually. If I could see it. Some person may come across this and say, you know what we are? We're forwarders.
Which really isn't solving anything. They're just forwarding the issue to the next person.
At least it gives them another non-answer to these questions. So what is it that you want to get accomplished? Well, the first thing we want to get accomplished is the fact that we are forwarders and we are here to go forward. Helps. Look at that. It just rolls off the tongue. Look at that. Anyway, continue.
Right, so he leaves the Democrats. He becomes this forwarder. And I can't help but see in his narrative, as he's telling this story and airing his grievances against the Forward Party, that he's looking for a new kind of party, but he still desires the constraints of traditional long-term parties. It's like he's looking for something new and fresh and something that allows him to be free from whatever it is that's confining his ideals. But then he's complaining about every time it's not like the other parties he's experienced. And in the nature of
the person who just wants to belong.
I mean, there might be some of that too. But here's a direct quote from him. One problem is that Forward sees itself as so innovative that the normal rules of politics and organizational behavior don't apply. Right? And I understand, right? Like, I understand that you can't be above engaging with the public. And if that's knocking on doors, so be it. I understand that, to get things moving, there needs to be some structure. But do you think a party can function if it's well-funded but loosely organized? And this party is well-funded. It's got millions of dollars, apparently. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that, where does a party need to be so structured? You're laughing because of like how it all came together, but let's remove that part of it and just say, like, what if they were all of the same ilk? Could they function without having that type of rigidity? I
think here's the issue. In order to innovate, or how about this? Because I don't want to just throw out blanketed statements, but I'm going to throw out a blanketed statement. So when it comes to innovation, the people who are most successful at innovating are those who understand basically the foundational principles of whatever it is that they are trying to innovate on better than anyone else. It's like they know the rules, so they understand how to break them properly. If that makes any sense. I don't know if that's getting...
It does. No, I mean, that's always the thing where you can't...
Well, there you go. So
you have to know the rules in order to break them.
I think that's the problem with the Forward.
You can't take shortcuts until you're a pro.
Right. And I think the Forward Party is trying to say we're going to innovate without fundamentally understanding the space that we are trying to innovate upon. And that is the structural foundational problem with the Forward Party.
So you may
have money, but they don't have experience in understanding the game of politics, how it is played, and therefore how to disrupt that space. They're just coming in saying, we're here, we're new, we're going to disrupt because we're cool. They just have no idea what they're doing. That's the problem.
You may have started to go into a later question that I have, so I don't want to lose this thread. But it's an interesting point to make that, but then that does fly in the face. Like, I think there's these bits of wisdom that you hear throughout your life. There is always an application for them, but they can't always be applied, because you would never have disruptors, right? Like people that come in that are new on the scene and they come up with something revolutionary and they just totally disrupt
that's never happened. That's never happened. That's a myth. There's no such thing as, there's no disruptor that anyone can name to be in life where they came out of nowhere and completely shook up a space. Not one.
Amazon.
Jeff Bezos had a fundamental understanding of selling because he was working in books and turn those books into an online retail store. He understood how to sell online via a particular portion of an industry.
But he never had that experience before, right? I mean, that wasn't a thing.
I think if you go back, I mean, his experience is through sales in some capacity or another. I mean, it may have been very small, but my point is that there is a foundational experience that he was able to innovate upon because he understood the rules of the game. He understood how publishing worked, and he was therefore able to innovate on that. That's my point. There was literally nobody that you could throw out there, and they just eat. Well, there are a few people, and when people question how are they able to do it, there's usually a very suspect story of either maybe a little bit of theft, taking something from someone else that person was working on, and then kind of running with it. So yeah, I mean, there are a few points like that. But my point is that you don't just come from nothing. And then
that's interesting. I'll be honest. In the moment, I cannot think of anything because I wasn't prepared for that.
Oh,
but
listeners, come out. Yeah,
listeners, come at it. If you have something that an example of a true disruptor. Now, you don't need to have zero experience to be a disruptor. So I don't want to pigeonhole anyone in that, but I'd be curious to see what the listeners come back with. But
yeah, sure.
All right. So I actually like the idea, though. So going back to what I was saying, I like the idea of candidates doing what they want and not having the national org getting too involved in matters of policy. Again, I don't know if that is feasible or viable in terms of political party, but there's something about that I like. And in my head, when I'm thinking through this, I'm like, maybe the national org is just for fundraising, and they're fundraising based on a promise of not making promises and letting locals do what's best for those communities.
Who would donate to that?
I would.
Okay, that's one person. How much would you donate to that?
I don't know.
Because then it's not enough to get someone elected. Because you're the only person who's going to donate to that. No one, I cannot. It doesn't even make sense. You're basically at that point asking for charity. You're saying, I'm going to give you nothing, but I want something. Which that's the definition of charity. You're basically asking people to feel good by giving you money in order to run for office. If you're going to promise them nothing, that makes it flies in the face of how the political system naturally works.
I'm walking you through my thought process, and so I do appreciate that critique of that thought. The thought did evolve into something else.
Okay,
that I'll get to. So now, while I'm unconvinced that a platform should be formed around issues and candidates, formed around issues that candidates need to adhere to. The author is peeved that the national org has loose stances that say something along the lines of, some members feel this way, other members feel that way on any particular issue. In other words, check with your local party candidate for an answer to see how they feel about it. And the author would rather affirm widely adopted stance and sees the indecision as a party being too concerned with alienating potential members. And again, he might be right in their intent, but I do see an interesting approach for a different reason. I can see an argument being made that without a party platform, candidates can freeze their districts in time and never change, and there's no real peer or party pressure to apply to them to make them change. I can also see that candidates are free to do just the opposite and change at will and not be beholden to donor funding because they're just getting this funding. Now, the more I thought about it, and this is where we're getting into what I was just talking about, in response to what you said, the more I thought about it, about what the Forward Party could do, the more I thought about this, this could just be a way to fund independence, which is probably what the party is telling you it's trying to do. But then that just made me think, well, I want the government to do this. And then I was like, well, I don't know how they can. It seems like the Forward Party fulfills some level of vetting candidates, right? Even though they're saying like it's kind of up to them to do whatever they want, there's still some type of vetting. So I don't want the party to do this. I actually want the government to do this. And that's where my money would go. And so to answer your question about charity, it's not, because it's my tax dollars then that are going into it. But then
no, I don't want to go away from that because
but how does but my question here is, how does the government produce viable candidates and decide who gets the funding? Because if it's just based on signatures, then that would still favor people with budgets.
Yes and no. Because I think that there is something to what you've always talked about. Here's the thing. It's funny that you took this roundabout way to get back to your fundamental and core principle that there should be no parties.
Right. That's right.
If the government
long-term parties, folks, long-term parties. I like the idea of people coalescing around an achievable issue within the term they're given. They achieve it, then they disperse, form around new issues with new people or the same, doesn't matter, but no long-term party platforms. That's not good for anyone.
If the government were to fund if you were a candidate and you're basically applying for a grant, because I think that's the scenario that you're trying to implicate here, is that you're saying, if I want to run for office, it means that I need to apply for a grant, and that grant is going to help me run for office. So then I basically need to apply and pass whatever the government checks would be for someone to run, which could include signatures. It could include an age limit, which it already does. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, people might be like, "Oh, the government," it's like there is already an age limit as to when you can run for office. There are a number of different things and it is the government essentially through the parties that kind of sets, does the checks of this validating the signatures and how you get a signature and things of that nature, and also going back to check to make sure that those signatures are valid, things of that nature. So, I don't see a world where that's not possible. I see a world where majority of people who currently try to run for office will stop because running for office will not be as profitable if you are capped. If everyone gets an equal share of a pot,
isn't that better?
I agree. I don't know why.
Isn't that like the bad? Isn't that like the worst reason to run? I mean, it's supposed to be an office of public service.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's look. Here's the thing. I think it's a great idea. There are many reasons for why we won't get there. Part of it is that the parties have no incentive to put forward a plan like this because it starts to chip away at their own personal power. Why would anyone give up power? And B, I think that there's enough anti-government rhetoric in our current system that people automatically will feel as if their candidates are no longer, I don't know, serving them somehow because they are now serving the government, and then people will start to get very
so disassociated. People with it's so weird.
Who the government's selecting, who's not getting on ballots, even though the party is far more insidious in the ways in which they select who can run and who can get elected and who they put their weight behind. That has nothing to do with the average person. Somehow I feel that even though ideally you'd be giving the average person more power in terms of selecting who it is that actually represents them, there will be a way basically the conversation will get spun on its head where people will feel as if they're more alienated and there's more distrust in the process, even though it is a more transparent process.
It's so funny. The more people become distrustful of the government, the more they pull away from engaging in the government. Right. And it's that void, that lack of participation is where you lose control. It's like this weird self-fulfilling prophecy where the government isn't mine. I'm not going to take part in it. And then there are people that take part in it. Like, don't be a fool. Like, there are people that do it, and all you're doing is giving them your power. Absolutely. It's an interesting dynamic, an interesting way to think about government in that way.
But so, I mean, here's the thing. If we were to believe the forward party is trying to do what they claim to be doing, which, again, no official position, it would be in this vein. They would be doing, we talked about this. We're like, the forward party does not come out and start talking about ranked choice voting necessarily. I mean, that could easily be their number one talking point if they really were about disrupting the current voting landscape and giving third party candidates a chance. Yeah, Andrew Yang does mention it every now and then, but it's just not the focus. It's not the cornerstone of what the party is trying to accomplish.
Right? And the forward party, I mean, you're only creating a cult of personality if you're like, well, Andrew said it, so the party said it. Like, it needs to be so much more than Andrew being out there and saying it.
Is that I was actually hoping you were leading into that's what the article is ultimately trying to say.
No. Because
there is nobody else but Andrew. Yeah. So I mean, I feel like I felt at the end of it, there's going to be this big crescendo we're building up to. The French horns are playing. We're running through the woods. And the guy's like, at the end of the day, does anyone else running this party besides Andrew Yang? Because he's the only one most people can name. So,
well, the main frustration with the author after he said all of these things was, and to boot, they get slaughtered every time. Like, every time he was being an activist for the party in whatever race, they just keep getting pounded by the competition. So in his eyes, it's not even a viable party because they can't compete. So there you have it. And it's probably
they don't know the rules.
You've only ever heard of Andrew.
And you've only, and there's that. I mean, it's also like, it's what kind of platform is that? What kind of platform is it where someone says, I'm bringing together people of varying ideological beliefs and allowing them to operate on those various ideological beliefs under this new umbrella with a brand new name.
But see, that's so all right.
That's
so
just
because
weird. It's like, all right, I'm supporting the Ford Party, and they have a Republican over here in this small district to the left. They've got a Democrat over here to this small district in the right. Okay, I mean, it's just it feels like people who don't have homes. It feels like a party. It feels like the Bad News Bears. It feels like a bunch of rejects who cannot survive within their own respective parties coming out under this new umbrella of
the
just
bad news,
it's
the
like
bad news
TARP.
Bears come
funding
together and win. Like,
oh, you're right. So this is worse than the Bad News Bears. This is this is the movie where you come to see them fail and you walk home depressed. This is
all right.
it's
So
ridiculous.
So you and the author seemingly agree, right? So you and the author,
you mean me, the author, and anyone who pays attention to politics in any way, shape, or form?
Because I'm still holding on to my guns. I do not agree with why they are doing it this way, but the author and you and apparently everyone else sees a party that's scared to commit to specific issues. I see a system that promotes individual candidates instead of a party platform. You, the author, and everyone else see disorganization. I see unrestricted.
Okay.
And so my question to you is, and you kind of already answered it, but is that a viable competitor in today's political system, or does this approach need to be the entire system in order to work?
They need to understand the system in which they operate. I'm going to just stand by that. This is the reason they are disorganized is because they lack fundamental strategic understanding of how it is you get elected in this country. I'm going to stand by that. I don't care if they've got Harvard pollsters or people.
I don't know. So I don't know what organization and structure is in the way that you're describing it. But let's just say the Forward Party doesn't have it. Mm-hmm. Now, is there room to have whatever that is, but also not a national platform and only various local platforms?
I think they need. I don't think so. I think I'm going to just give it to you. I do not. The national platform they need to have is, I guess, if you're just going to go local and say that, hey, if you join the Forward Party, this is about joining your local community, like whoever is currently running whatever they stand for within your local community. That could be it, I guess. It's just so
every Republican,
it's
every Republican, every Democrat, every independent, every Green Party member. I don't know, whatever it is. It's everyone who loses. It's everyone who loses their primary. Yeah. They don't have to go independent anymore because they can join this party and get funding. And what I like about it is this totally it has the potential to destroy the two-party system, because it will give the funding and make every race competitive because someone will always have funding.
But again, these people are not. Here's the thing: the parties, and again, this is the issue we're all having with parties. The parties don't stand for what they espouse to stand for. This is the hypocrisy that people are frustrated with. If you just have rejects from these parties that people already don't like, and they're
that's not true though. But you're guessing that's why they didn't win.
I'm guessing that's why they didn't win. Yeah,
it could be that they didn't have the persona or the exposure coming into it. That they didn't have didn't have the donations. They didn't give away.
They don't have the donations because they don't.
Yeah, but how do you get donations? By making promises to special interest groups. How is that more qualified? How is that a reject in the way that you implied it, as if they would be bad at governing? How is not compromising yourself to special interests being a reject?
It doesn't necessarily. I mean, look, it's only because of the nature of our current political system why special interests have so much power. There are ways to limit that power. I'm talking about from like a fundamental philosophy of why a party exists to begin with. The whole point of a party is to rally behind a specific ideology, or I don't want to speak too much to the history of parties, but I want to believe at some point a party got together because they wanted to pass one or a few pieces of legislation that everyone agreed upon. And they
probably wanted to gang up on other states.
Exactly. And, you want to create a gang. I'm just saying you gotta believe it's something. can't believe in nothing. Like that's like a
Yeah, but
fundamental level.
you can believe
want to do
you
something.
you can believe in something, but I have a hard time believing that every member of a party believes in all the beliefs.
They don't.
Exactly, and that's the problem. That's the problem
It's
that
a
I have.
spectrum. All the parties have a spectrum, and that's
But
really what we're dealing with here. How wide that spectrum has gotten is what's.
But it's who's
annoying.
contributing to that spectrum. Everyone would need to be so pure, because you will, as a party and as a member of that party, if everyone's contributing to that party platform, the spectrum, you are only as strong as your weakest link. And they have a lot of weak links. There are a lot of people accepting donations.
Look, if I wanted to promote electric vehicles, how do I go with the Ford party? How do you do that? How does the Ford party appeal to me now? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, what are they going to do?
They're going to write legislation when they get voted in, and they're going to do something.
They don't all believe in electric vehicles. They may not all believe climate change is real. I don't know.
So then you don't vote for that candidate in your district.
Okay, fine. So and I'm not. So then you don't support the Ford party. That's how it happens.
Not in your district. If there was another candidate that did something better.
How am I supposed to support them elsewhere if I don't like the candidate in my own district? So I don't like that candidate, and let's say I don't like,
because there's another candidate who's not beholden in the same way, and you're like, oh, I don't like the candidate for Congress, but I love the candidate for the Senate, and I don't like the candidate for this, but I love the candidate for that. Yeah, you get to pick.
Who's he going to vote with?
Now you don't have to vote down party lines, and nothing gets done because it's, oh, well, we know we're going to get the vote and our party will stay in power. Don't worry, Joe. We know you lost last time, but we're going to give you a no-show job until the next election cycle.
So
and then you'll get back in there, Tiger.
So I mean, I don't want to belabor it, but the Ford party, basically at that point, it's a non-party. Then it's just, again, it's
exactly
just a fund. It's
exactly.
Just a fund.
That's why I said I want the government to do it, because it is exactly. No, that's exactly my point. Is that there's no national platform.
No, I know that's
why I said I don't agree with the what, because they're getting to what I want out of pure dysfunction. Like, that's why I said I agree with the what function and not the why. That's why I started. I agree with the what and not the why. I agree with what they're doing. I just don't agree with why they're doing it, because they're doing it out of ineptitude.
Yeah.
And I like what they're doing because it speaks to the dismantling of the parties. At least long-term.
If they could get their stuff together and actually come out with that kind of a platform, then they might have a fighting chance. That might be something they could do. I'll give them that. You're just saying they're bad. And I love that they're bad because the badness is they're an
it's such a non-linear journey. The badness is actually uncovering potential. Like, it's like stumbling onto something like, oh wow, maybe this is how you could do it.
Well, then someone else should come up with a new party that does just that, because that will be more successful than what they're currently trying to enact.
I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. The Retraction party, people, you heard it here first. We are a party that's just about getting all your money together. We don't need social security numbers. Don't need
and let the individual sell you on something instead of this corporation that calls itself a party.
Yeah, like you said, if the government wants to do that. And again, is the Ford party giving the money away equally? Do they have a stance on that? Even?
Nobody knows. Though the national org is still trying to figure that out.
Good to know. All right, so they're exactly where we left them a couple of months ago. What was it, like maybe 2-3 years ago that Andrew Yang started his podcast, which I listened to a couple of episodes, but they're exactly where they were. They're from the very beginning.
Well, no, I think they're actually they either have
a couple of L's.
They either just have become or are seeking to become a party. They've been called the Forward Party since its inception, but it was actually a PAC. It wasn't ever a party.
Oh, similar to what you're saying. Yeah, it was just money. Yeah, it's just a big for money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that was interesting.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they were using that money to fund existing candidates. And I think like people who they were trying to influence, they were a PAC. They were like their own special interest. They were trying to influence existing candidates who held positions instead of running their own people and having dignity. But
or strategy.
Yeah, that's strategy. Yeah, that's it. Strategy.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, hats off to you, Ford Party. We're always rooting for you to do something.
I actually am, because there's not a lot of new things in the political arena. And although they're doing a poor job at executing whatever it is their vision is, at least it's something. And I don't know, maybe after a decade, some new guy or gal will come in and have a vision and totally take the reins and change something, and at least they'll have somewhat of a foundation to get some traction off of. I mean, if there was nothing, it would be, if it's even possible, it would be more depressing.
I feel like you're just about to pull down a blue participation ribbon and pin it onto Andrew Yang's lapel. Is that what you're about to do? Because that feels like what you're doing. You're like, hey, you were out here. Here's your ribbon.
No, what I would probably akin it to, really, maybe this is a bad analogy, but you're freezing in a tundra, and there is little sparkles, little sparks somewhere. It does nothing to keep you warm, absolutely nothing, but it has potential.
All right. You got anything else with regard to the Forward Party?
No. No. I had another topic, but we'll go for yours.
Okay. So switching gears is that, I mean, I love politics, which is where it's hard to switch away from politics. AI has just been all over the news, and I basically ChatGPT, I believe it's GPT, came into my crosshairs.
I've heard of this too, by the way. I've seen and heard chat.
Well, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
GPT.
Mostly because it's backed
what
by
is
Microsoft.
It? Who owns? Yeah, it's Microsoft. Okay.
Yeah. And because they just have so much resources that they've basically thrown behind it, and it's very good. It can do basically kind of what Midjourney can do, except for more things than simply art. Or it can write a novel. If you were to painstakingly ask it enough questions and put together a plot, it will write a novel for you. It will code for you. It will market. It'll create an advertisement for you. I think Ryan Reynolds, I don't know if I even sent it to you. He just had a Chat GPT advert that whether they actually used it or not to create the advert, I don't know, but it's funny to think of it. But the thing is, it actually could do an advertisement if you were to give it enough information.
So Chat GPT, you
ask it a question. You ask it a question.
Oh, it has to be in the form of a question?
Well, I mean, it could be a command. I mean, I don't want to get too bogged down.
Well, Midjourney you could command it, right? You would write a string of commands.
You could command it. Or
comma separated commands or whatever, right? I mean,
yeah. So I mean, it's like a query dialog box that you interface with it, and but you could definitely do commands if you wanted to.
So it's not limited to art. You can do, but is it? But it. Well, I want to say, because art in the context of Midjourney, were like paintings and drawings are very much that. But what you've just described is still all art, whether it's an ad or a novel or a painting. So is it still within the realm of art, or is there anything outside of that?
No, it could code. I mean, I've started to incorporate it a little bit, as opposed to going out and looking through 100 different Reddits or various sites up, or looking through the documentation and literature for any one particular piece of code in order to figure something out. You could just ask ChatGPT and it will give you a general principle, or if it's, it depends on how much information it has and how many times maybe someone has requested something very similar. But it'll give you a general framework that you can just start working from, as opposed to having to piece it together yourself. So it makes work a little faster, which is kind of what the person that I'm that also is talking about the art, basically the YouTube channel is called, not the YouTube channel, but the YouTube video is called The Fundamental Problem with AI Art. They do get into some of the interesting uses and how it could be helpful a little bit later in their video. But I wanted to play an excerpt of it because I feel like this person, it's their name is Mark Brunet. It could be Brunet. It's Brunet. About 1.23 million subscribers. So pretty big YouTube channel. And I thought that this person kind of distilled a lot of the questions and the issues that we originally talked about when we did talk about Midjourney, because we did an episode. I can't remember what it was called, but we did an episode on AI art.
I think it was simply AI art or something along those lines.
And to recap that episode, it was you brought it. Basically, someone had entered AI art into an art competition and won, and then they caused a massive controversy over doing that. And then we just sort of talked about various aspects as to what may be right or wrong about that. about doing something like that, and how the art community should, or how that should be. I was saying that AI art should not be valued, like it should not be in the same space as someone who's creating art
It should be
originally.
judged separately and
Judged
under a
separately.
different category.
Exactly.
And my
Not
thing was,
competing.
is that this enables access to this medium to so many other people who may not have the natural ability to draw. I mean, to put it in simplest terms.
Yeah, I'm glad you just said that, because that's exactly what this guy is addressing. So let's listen to this
now. So let's start with the biggest issue: how these AIs were trained to do what they do. AIs, just like dogs, need a lot of training to learn to do new tricks. Way more training than dogs, actually. I'm simplifying this a lot, but basically the AI learns and improves by example. You show it examples of art that you want it to reproduce, text descriptions, a ton of it, and guide it as to what is desirable and what isn't. Over many iterations, it gets good at recreating beautiful art, just like a pet learns to more accurately follow commands as you repeat them over and over. AIs only developed at an acceptable pace if they have a lot of examples though, as in billions of examples. The database called the Lion 5B database, on which most of these AIs were trained, contains 5.8 billion text and image data scraped from the internet. An insane amount. And in this case, the vast majority of all the art that was used to train these AIs were taken without permission by unscrupulous programmers from artists all around the world without their consent and without compensation. Taken from you and me. I'm not gonna say it's art theft, but it sure smells like art theft to me. In my mind, just like that of a huge segment of the art community, this is the main issue with AI generators. Had it been trained on voluntarily submitted or paid art or public domain art like it should have been, AI art would likely suck so bad compared to what it is now that nobody would pay serious attention to it. It would never be considered as more of a tool in some specific applications. Instead, it got good fast off the backs of unknowing artists, and now these companies are raking in tons of cash selling their AI services to everyone they can. I'll admit though, it's crazy impressive. As a technology, it's fascinating, kind of similar to cloning people. It's crazy what we're capable of. I can see many valid ways this could be integrated in artist workflows, but I'll get to that later. As it is now, and until they retrain their AIs from scratch using only voluntary submissions and public domain images, using Midjourney or Stable Diffusion is the equivalent of shopping at a used car shop where you know that all the inventory was likely built from stolen car parts. Car parts stolen from your neighbor's car. From a moral standpoint, everything about this is wrong in my opinion.
I think, I mean, yeah, he goes on to basically explain a couple of different areas in which AI art actually can be very helpful to the artistic community, as well as ways in which it is incredibly limited, even though they have currently sourced billions of artistic renderings across the internet in order to get the AI art to the level of which people are using it today. But he goes.
So how can there not be a tax? I mean, I get it, right?
Well, that's he
the
sort of
5 billion isn't made up of strictly volunteered, paid for, or public domain art. So you tax its users.
I mean, it's not a government. So I mean, he does talk about it in the way of like a bank. He says, a bank has rules. A bank cannot just do whatever it wants with your money. There are government rules in place in terms of what a bank can and cannot do. He's basically saying that the same thing needs to apply for these AI generated art companies as they currently stand. And I just thought that was such an interesting and very.
But the artists need to be compensated.
If they could,
where does that money
doing
go?
What they're doing, yeah, sure.
The artists so if I make something that's under copyright and it is on the internet, but you're not allowed to use whatever's on the internet,
right?
So how does that person how does that artist get money for the AI art that was created in part using their? But that's what I mean. There needs to be a tax, and they need to get some kind of money.
I mean, you're saying tax. I mean,
it doesn't matter. A law in place.
A royalty is what you're saying. There needs to be some sort of royalty in place.
Some law that protects them.
Someone would need to basically say, "Show me your work." You need to go into one of these. You need to go into Midjourney,
into the 5 billion thing.
Yeah, you would need to say, you would need to say, give us every piece of art that informed Midjourney and how it currently creates. We need to evaluate it contact.
AI
to
can.
people.
Ironically, AI can do that. Ironically, the artists submit their work with their name associated with it, and AI can check that 5 billion database against all the submissions from various artists
If someone were to
to
create
claim
an
their
AI
money,
to do
to
that.
claim
Could be.
damages.
Could do that. Yeah, maybe. I
Why
mean, not
not?
maybe. They could. Again, the company of Midjourney would have to reveal that information.
Or they are forced to. They're compelled to.
You'd have to have a case, yeah, probably some
The
level.
case sounds like a copyright infringement case, right?
I mean, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I hear no, it does, but I mean, no one is. No, there are no articles talking about class action lawsuits against these AI art based on the artists that have been affected. It could be coming, but I just thought this was interesting. Again, I'm not hearing it all over the place. That's why I thought this was a very Mark Burnett. I thought he had a very interesting take on this, and you should go check out the video. So
I'm not surprised there's not a case. We don't understand stuff. I mean, the former president was hawking NFTs like a couple weeks ago, so I'm not surprised that we don't understand how to govern
Yeah, well,
digital
we talk
licensing.
About this, yeah, we talk about this all the time. How archaic the laws are, and they tried. I mean, they try to broaden the structure of law in order to encompass a lot of the new stuff that is currently coming out. But it's miles behind, and yeah, this is just another example where the law is just not equipped in order to deal with this. It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out, but it definitely brings a new level of morality to the AI phenomenon.
I mean,
people are
that
not considering.
I didn't know. I had no idea.
Well, that's why we're doing this.
I thought
I don't
that
think a lot
I
of people
knew.
know.
I think we knew that there was a library of content because that's what we were talking
Yes.
about last time. Was that will you get anything new if you're just regurgitating the same stuff over and over?
And that's
we
an
got
argument
into
he makes later. He says
and
no.
we
He says
and
that
we got
this is the limitation, is that you'll never get anything new. He's like, if people stop making art today, you will only be seeing art that is within the confines of art that has already been created. That the AI will never innovate on what you see today. It'll never create something truly new.
And I think that you had made the argument because that's what I had said, and what you had said is nothing is truly new. It's just a new combination of what
I'm not
exists.
sure I agree with that. Yeah.
But there is an
But
element
that's what
of
he said.
sometimes there are new techniques, techniques. Now,
Yeah, new techniques.
yeah, so it's interesting. So I'm glad you're bringing it up because I did not know that they were violating copyright law. I didn't know that. That is now I don't know. Now I don't want the free thing. Now I don't want to. Now I don't want to make
give
AI
me your
art.
gender. Now you're rescinding your gender.
Yeah, for the same principles, right? You're not getting what's owed to you. That's really messed up. They're stealing. Now, it's one thing to not know or be unsure, and then you get sent a letter and they're like, stop doing this. It's not cool. We're not okay with it. Because sometimes you can take people's art and they're cool with it. It's really, right? Isn't that the artist's discretion to a degree? Like whether or not someone can use it?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. In copyright, you would have to be reproducing. It's like they're not necessarily selling the art on the internet. They're not using it on their website. That's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't fall into any of the.
They're profiting off of it though,
in a loose way. I guess here's where I'm going to.
Are you allowed to take copyright material and do whatever you want with it? Aren't there like
this? I'm going to counter
because the used car thing, which I thought was a cheap shot at used cars places. Do they all steal parts?
No,
but I know, but but it was
you're like,
wow.
God, why are you kicking the used car salesman?
Well, seriously, I mean, everyone's got to, make a living. But it was an interesting example.
Clearly, someone has a used car salesman in their family.
I don't, and I never actually thought twice about it. But I just was like, wow, you really zeroed in on those folks. I just felt bad for them. But you have, it's an interesting point to say they stole the parts to make yours. Now, no, they didn't steal the whole car. Like you're not getting the car, you're getting pieces of someone else's car that unknowingly gave them, and that's an interesting way to put it. Is that right? Is that a right way to put it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Here's my counter to it, and I want to agree with him. That's the other thing. I'm only countering because I feel like this is the argument that someone in the opposing camp would make, which is that you watch that video. Now the audience at home, unless you go to the video, which I encourage you to look at it, You don't see that he is drawing while he is talking, which is how he does all his videos. If I was at home and I was a budding artist, I could take what he is currently drawing. I could start recreating it, and then I could innovate on it, and it would be mine. I wouldn't have to pay him. I wouldn't have to reference this. I could be inspired.
Depends how close it was, though, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly
because that happens in music, right? That happens in music, where
sure. I mean, music a little. I mean, yeah, you're right. It does happen to music, but my point is, I feel like that this is how people learn in general. People learn how to make art off of art that already exists. That's how artists are trained. You're trained by learning the masters of the past.
How to make a curve and an eyeball or whatever it is.
It's more than that. It's more.
But I'm simplifying it. But you learn how to do. Yes, you learn how to do all of that. But then when you go out and draw for yourself, you do not copy all those things. You do make it your own. But now you have the technique.
You make it your own.
You have a technique. It's almost like what we were just talking about. Once you know the rules, you can break them. You have your technique, and now you can put your own flair on it and stuff. But you cannot reproduce, someone else's work.
Right, but technically, Midjourney is not doing that. It's not reproducing other work. It is mashing up billions of artistic techniques.
But that's the part. That's the interesting part, is that it kind of is. It's just on such a scale that you can't recognize it. So it's almost like if you were a bug with a bunch of eyes versus us with one eye. Right. You could just see so much more. Right. If you could just see all the little details, and you could be like, oh my God, they ripped off 333 paintings that I know.
You could say that. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, then you can do it. You just don't know it all. And it's on such a scale, and it's not drawing anything net new. It's just chopping things up. Like those little serial killers that take the eyes from a magazine and a nose from a magazine. It's doing that on an enormous scale, in my eyes.
But you're right. Here's the thing. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that on a fundamental level, in terms of the way in which, because AI is not a person. And I think that that's where we have to make these distinctions.
It's being commanded by a person.
But the tool itself,
it's not like a RICO case against the mafia.
It's like, it's not a person.
I didn't kill him.
According to the Supreme Court, a corporation could be a person, but AI is not a person. And until the Supreme Court makes it a person, I think we could come down to that. Because here's the thing: you could technically say that an artist is doing something similar. If you're creating and you've studied art, you are pulling together millions of different, like, you're pulling together all the paintings you've ever seen in your life in order to influence you to build something new, or it influences your work in some way, shape, or form. You could make that same argument of an individual. What we allow it because that's the way
that's learn. Interesting though, is that the individual is still doing it themselves, and isn't that inherently a little, at least arguably a little different? I guess my point here is, does AI have a personal style that it's never a replicant? Even if it goes to draw something else, it's always a little different because it's AI's personal style.
Now, according to him, no. According to this YouTuber, it will never do that. According to him,
so then it is
always
different.
Copy.
And that's kind of, I don't know. I'm having trouble being on the side of Midjourney, and I like it. I
don't want to be on the side of Midjourney because I think what the creators have done is definitely copyright infringement. I'm just saying that if you wanted to play devil's advocate and start to probe, you could say, well, that's people do something similar, but to the extent that the AI will never innovate makes it different. And you're not, because it's a computer, because it's a program, so it's not theoretically taking. It's like, that's what a person cannot.
I guess my thing is,
a painting to the detail without referencing it.
I don't know paintings and stuff. So I'm going to, I guess, use something slightly different.
Okay.
But if I was to look at 5 images that were totally copyright protected, maybe it's like Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, Chris Evans, Captain America, Paul Rudd's Ant-Man, right? You got those 3. And then I just literally copy and pasted elements to make a new person. Would I get in trouble for that?
No.
Okay, so then I guess, is that the argument for Midjourney here?
That's
is that if you can
make,
is that if that is not copyright infringement, and you could clearly say that's Robert Downey's face, that's Chris Evans' body, and that's Ant-Man's suit or helmet. Who knows? I don't know. Marvel cannot come after you for that.
I would say no, because as long as you've made enough changes, which is by
it's
wait, you didn't,
because I don't know what
you put them together. Did you put them together?
You
what did you
put
do
them
differently?
Different. So again, I take Iron Man's head, Robert Downey Jr.'s face, put him on Captain America's body.
Yeah.
Let's just say do that too, because I am having trouble working in Paul Rudd.
Yeah. Sure.
So those two. I take Robert Downey's body,
you
head,
take Paul Rudd's legs.
Sure, Paul Rudd's legs. Okay. All right, and I do that, and so you got the star from Captain America, you got Ant-Man's legs, which I'm having trouble picturing in the moment, and Robert Downey's face. You have those three components, and then you publish it in your own comic book, the Super Duper Dude. Can Marvel sue you for that? I think they can.
I want to say no, because you're making a derivative.
You can use Robert Downey's face.
I don't know if
Captain America's
he's a public figure.
And Marvel, but not that image that I used. That image is copyright protected. All that stuff is copyright
Chris
protected.
Evans' face. Are you saying that he's
Robert Downey's face? Don't ruin my example.
Sorry, you got
Robert Downey's
Robert Downey Jr.'s face,
and then it's Chris Evans', let's say, body, and it's his uniform. So Marvel artistically create their costume
maybe they might own the combination of
that.
colors that create that uniform. Maybe
but the art department the costume department made that uniform, right? They sewed it. It's theirs. They made it. It's their version of Captain America, and they own the rights to Captain America.
If I wanted to make a comic book and do exactly what you just did, I don't see why. I don't know if.
Oh man, I don't think you can, dude. I don't think you can put Robert Downey Jr.'s face in your comic book.
Of course I could.
Not the image that's copyrighted.
Yeah, but I don't know how. That's why I guess maybe we're getting too much on the semantics.
No, because you're saying that the Midjourney is using copyrighted material. So it's not that you went out with your personal camera and snapped a photo like paparazzi of Robert Downey. No, you went into Marvel's press conference or People magazine. I don't know. And you took that image. You took an image that you did not pay for, and it has rights. Like it has copyright.
But I drew him. If I drew it myself, and I didn't cut it and paste it, or I didn't.
Well, I'm talking about a photo, but then I guess if there was a Marvel, so if there was a Marvel, if there was a Marvel comic book, then I was using photography, so you don't draw photography, literally copy and pasting it like a collage is what I was getting at. But let's just say it was copyrighted art.
That's probably not kosher. You probably couldn't do that. Yeah, you're right. You could take the pictures and just put them together. I mean, maybe there'll be an argument, but yeah, you probably couldn't do that.
No, I don't think that you could.
Pretty bad comic book, but sure.
It doesn't matter. But because that's the scale. Because
that's not what it's doing.
When it's three images, you're like, wow. Like I said before, wow, you pointed out I know those three people. That's freaking weird that you did that. And also, are you even allowed to do that? But when it's 5 billion, you don't know. You don't have the capacity to know, but it's there. It's at huge scale, and you're robbing. I think
this is where we are. This is why there's such, this is why it's a contentious issue. It's why this guy could be out here saying that clearly.
I feel like if this gets brought to the Supreme Court, that my example is exactly the example that they'll use. That's what I feel.
I don't think so.
I think so. I'm pretty confident in that. They're going to be like, I heard it before. I can't remember where, but if you took Paul Rudd's legs, Chris Evans' uniform, and Robert Downey Jr.'s face, you couldn't do it. Mark my words.
You're saying that you cannot take a photo of a photo.
A copyrighted photo. You cannot use a copyrighted photo. 3 of them. Make your own photo with only copy and pasting them. You didn't change anything other than chop them up.
Well, you did change something. You chopped them up and pieced them together. You did change something.
Yeah.
It's the degree to which the change has occurred that is where you would argue. That's the argument that needs to be made.
Still very recognizable.
Fine, but I'm just saying that's the legal.
So is there? So I don't know this.
Derivative.
The degree sounds subjective, so I don't know where that threshold is.
Well, I mean this is why I think AIR has been allowed to flourish, is because again, if you're mixing together 5 billion pieces of art, it gets very difficult to understand, where that line is, where the derivative work, what is being originally created, diverges from.
And what else is interesting is that threshold a sliding scale? Because clearly a human cannot combine 5 billion of anything. right? Like it's not possible. You don't have the lifetime to do it. So is it that, yeah, it's like a artist doing something, learning something, and then translating it onto their own medium. And there has to be a certain degree of change, as you were saying, where it becomes acceptable and not just a total ripoff of someone else's copyrighted material. Does AI have to be treated differently because its capabilities are so superior in terms of composition?
So this is, I'll answer that question. I wanted to get to the derivative work because here we are, there's a fact to this. So I figured we should just look this up for the pod right now. According to Cornell law, derivative works can be created with the permission of the copyright owner or from works in the public domain. In order to receive copyright protection, a derivative work must add a sufficient amount of change to the original work. This distinction varies based on the types of work. The distinction varying at the type of work is probably
the question at hand.
That's
the question at hand. So that makes sense. Good. We're at least thinking about it the right way. And I wonder then if you were like, listen, a human can only do so much, but the vast capabilities of AI, you can't hold them to a human standard. It needs to be different because of exactly what we're talking about right now.
Exactly what we're saying. Exactly. That's why this is different. So
interesting. Yeah.
That's what I had. I wanted to put that back up into the public domain.
That was a good one. I got a light science one.
Yeah, let's do the light science. Then we'll come back just to top it off with the conversation on the bounties. And
all right,
that's it. That's our episode. That's episode 105.
All right,
late for me to name the episode.
All right. So it was a little bit of an internet sensation as much as a science story can be. But in 2021, a meteorite fell to Earth and landed in the UK. It was the first in 30 years, seen by thousands of people. Why is this newsworthy other than that? Well, it's been confirmed that the meteorite was carrying amino acids. For those of you who don't know, amino acids are organic compounds essential for life on Earth. Organic compounds have been found in asteroid remnants before, but this one is unique for two reasons. Reason number one, the materials were altered in a way that suggests the asteroid body it came from had liquid water. Super cool. It's actually something like it. I don't know how they figured this out, but like liquid water must have spurted out like it 3 times and they could figure that out somehow. It's pretty cool. So this could actually be a new class of asteroids that contain water-bearing materials and may have seeded life on Earth. And the number 2 is the organic material in the meteorite was 10 times lower than in other meteorites of its kind. So why is that significant? Well, this discovery required tracking and rapid response. Minutes matter when you're collecting meteorites because you don't want them to become contaminated. If this wasn't picked up so quickly, its low level of organic material would have been compromised and indistinguishable from earthly contamination. And we wouldn't understand the type and frequency of organic compounds on asteroids seeding planets. So it's really cool. Actually like very really cool. Super cool. Like, so what that basically means, because that's a lot of jargon probably, is that you have the meteorites that have a lot of organic compounds, right? And they're hitting the Earth and we collect them and who knows how long it takes to get them. And you're like, wow, there's a bunch in here. We see that there's earthly compounds. We can take those out. And there's so much of this interstellar stuff that, holy cow. Now, if we're like, wow, that was one in every X amount of years, we can get an idea of through, different methods, how often this has happened now in the past and how things get formed within our solar system. But if you're getting hit with all of these little ones, and especially if it's in volume, but you're never picking up on them because you just deem them as earthly because they're contaminated to the point that you're like, I don't know what's what looking at this, you miss out on so much because it's almost like you have the big ones, but they're few and far between, but you have all the little ones and it's super high volume. So you really lose out on, God, who knows how many tons of organic compounds coming. So it's really cool. So this meteorite was collected within 12 hours of landing due to so many people having personal cameras, which is not surprising. Funny enough, they still can't get Bigfoot or ghosts, but they got this. So take it for what it's worth.
Give it time. Give it time.
And something called, which I didn't know what this was, if I'm to be honest, the Fireball Tracking Network, which would be an amazing channel on TV, I think. But it's the Fireball Tracking Network. And what's the Fireball Tracking
Looking
Network?
at you, Jerry Bruckheimer.
Planetary scientists have set up networks of cameras to track the paths of incoming objects in hope of finding meteorites more quickly. This not only identifies when a new meteorite hits the Earth, but it tracks flight paths and allows scientists to trace the meteorite back to its asteroid, which greatly enhances our understanding of our solar system evolution, which I think is just one of the coolest things in the world. I'm so terrible at math, but I have such a healthy respect for it. The fact that you could snap photos of something coming to our planet and then trace it all the way back to such a degree that the meteorite, you can follow it to the asteroid it was a part of, millions, billions miles away. I don't even know. Like, it's just insane what we can do. So, and then from there, you put the solar system together over eons. It's just such a cool thing. So that's it. It's a cool science update that should be getting global attention, but it isn't considered sensational enough to drive ad dollars, I'm sure. So it's a story of why you exist. But did the meteorite score a goal, release a new album, flip a table during a dinner party, manufacture socio-political outrage? Probably not. So here we are on the pod, elevating it for your consideration. Wish they could at least report on it with the weather, but yeah.
Well, the meteor should have landed during the World Cup final between Argentina and France.
Yeah, see, universe just doesn't understand.
It doesn't. It really doesn't
doesn't.
get our attention span and
The nuances of our culture.
and ad dollars.
Yeah.
So shame on you, universe. Do better.
So not really too much to vet out there, but I just thought it was a really cool story, and
It is.
it's consequential. I mean, it's stuff like this that answers really foundational questions that we ask ourselves, and we often turn to less reputable sources to answer. So how did we get here? Like, really?
Who sent
And
us?
Asteroids have liquid water? I didn't know that. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Anyway, I don't know if you have any comments, but
I'm just trying to think. I'm like, but there's no life forms that are found on an asteroid, right? I mean, it's never.
Not yet.
Yeah.
It's a big solar system. I was going to say it's a big universe, it's a big galaxy, but it's a big solar system. I don't know if you've ever seen it at scale, the size of the sun, the inner planets, and then the outer planets, and the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud and all this stuff. Like, it is
We've talked about
so
James Webb. We've talked about
vast.
those photos. We
Yeah.
talked about it.
It is just the scale is so.
JWST.
And when you see like pictures of the asteroid belt, you think that it's really cluttered, and relatively speaking, it is. But there's actually a lot of distance between all of that. It's
Oh yeah.
there's a lot out there,
There's a lot of nothing too. But yeah, which just
or dark matter, something we just don't know.
right. Yeah. There is that as well. There's a lot out there, people. Look up to the stars. Get a telescope.
Get
in the
inspired. Get
game.
inspired.
Get in the game. Get in the game of life.
All right, go ahead. You go.
So I just wanted to give an update because you brought up the bounty hunters last episode, and I said that New York had a bounty law, but I couldn't speak to specifics. So
You had to fight climate change, turning in your neighbor for idling for 10 minutes. Yeah.
well, there it is. And so
Real winners. Go ahead.
dedicated listener, New Yorker, turned me onto a cool article that appeared in the New York Times back in March of 2022.
Are you going to tell me that this impacts climate?
I'm gonna read to you the article.
You read me
And
the
then
article.
you could make your own decision. An excerpt, because we always implore people to go back to the source. The article is titled "They Earn Tens of Thousands by Turning in Idling Trucks." It's a bit sensationalist, that, because even looking at the article, I think there's like 20 people who make up the majority of the money that is currently earned in the city, and so it's a bit much. But anyway, let's just read a couple of excerpts here that might explain some of what Jamie was a little concerned about. New York City has a clean air program that allows people to report commercial vehicles that are parked and idling for more than 3 minutes or 1 minute outside of school.
Oh
That's
my
key.
God. Are you
that's
kidding?
key. Well, it is key because there is direct was it causation correlation? Basically, the health impact on children from carbon emissions of cars is well documented. So that I believe that's where that's coming from. So that's why they're far more severe on vehicles idling outside of a school than a vehicle that's just simply idling in a general area. So it's about the children. We're trying to protect the children.
And we would make EVs affordable if we were trying to protect the children.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, you're coming out of
3 minutes. 3 minutes. That's not a lot of time.
But I mean, apparently that's the law. So,
I mean, if only kids understood when it was time to go, it's time to go.
you have a lot of time to put that kid in the back. Those who report infractions by submitting a video can collect 25% of the fine collected by the city. That's $87.50 on a $350 fine. Just for anyone who's wondering about the way the dollars shake out.
I mean, what?
That's the specifics. That's the specifics of how the law works.
So I'm sorry, repeat that one more time.
Sure. You got the minute part. Outside of school, those who report infractions by submitting a video can collect 25% of the fine collected by the city. That's pretty high. It's a quarter of the fine.
This is so stupid.
$87.50.
I hope someone develops an AI program to just destroy the culture of the city so they can see how toxic this is. Like, just usher it in quickly. Someone write an AI script. Do what it would take a year to do in like 2 weeks. Just like ransack the city.
So okay.
with everyone who's still for a minute.
Hold on, Jersey. $87.50 on a $350 fine. Now, the article does admit this has given rise to a particular breed of urban bounty hunter, people who hunt down idling trucks and shoot videos, sometimes surreptitiously. I asked my colleague, Michael Wilson, who wrote about people who do this, to explain. First question, are they environmentalists or are they bounty hunters? This is the response, these idling warriors are pretty upfront about how great the money can be, but they are also very passionate about clean air. One man I spoke to, a man named Ernest Weld, actually became an environmental lawyer to address air pollution. He was confronting idling truck drivers for years before this program came about. So it goes both ways.
I'm sorry. As much as I hate being in the city, I actually really don't like driving in the city, but it happens from time to time. Yeah. And one of the worst things is getting stuck behind a truck making a delivery.
Right.
But you don't have the infrastructure. Where are they supposed to go?
There's that. Yeah, there's that. Yeah.
I mean, what do you want? What do you want from these people? I mean, would you park 7 blocks away if they're lucky? Like, what do you want?
So this person who sent me the article made a kind of interesting observation as well. So they said that I could kind of understand if they have a refrigerated truck making deliveries, but some aren't, and they sit there for 20 plus minutes. And in the summer, it's not fair to the community around them. And this person said, imagine if they did that in the suburbs under your window. I was like, that's a very good point. I wouldn't like that very much. So I will give that. I'll give that to them.
I mean, I don't know how
I live so high up that I never really noticed it. But if you live closer to the ground.
Listen, 20 minutes isn't one for one. So I'm not going to discount anything that they're saying, but there is a difference between 1 to 3 minutes and 20 minutes. And if it isn't to do something, so idling just means that the car is running, the truck is running. If they're just sitting in there eating a sandwich or something and not performing their job, I think that there's a legitimate question there. Like, what are you doing? Go find a rest stop or go find a parking lot or find a space that you can relax in. Well, I mean, and that's just part of the job. But no, you shouldn't be able to just pull over anywhere and like camp out for X amount of time with no repercussions. And it's not an it's not a climate change thing. But that is, I think, a community environmental thing, like the listener said. So I agree with that. But I think that if they are like doing their job and it happens to take 20 minutes to do it, then I would assume by nature that isn't so frequent, because how many times does that job need to be performed?
Yeah, I mean, but you can also turn off the truck at that point. I would say you should turn off the truck.
Yeah, I don't know the rule. Like you said, refrigerated. I guess the truck has to be running, or is that a separate battery? I don't know how that all works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why you would idle. I know that when you're parked in your car and it's hot out, you need your car to run. So you have AC, especially if it's hot out, or if it's cold, you need the heat. And so the car needs to be running for that kind of thing. Maybe it's as simple as that, like they need to not be stuck in the car with the windows rolled up. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then they're not performing their job either if they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to highlight the law.
That is a fair
highlight the
it's a fair
situation.
Criticism, but clearly it has not been defined enough to mitigate opportunists.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, in the article, it does say that one shorthand estimate is the fact that about 20 people, which I mentioned a little earlier, collected most of the $700,000 paid out in 2021.
I'm sorry, say that 700,000 was that is the 20%, 20 whatever percent?
20 people, not percent. 20.
No. But you said it's 20% of the fine. Is that the whole fine, or is that their portion that they collected, the 700?
The 700,000 is the quarter of fine of the a quarter of what was possibly fined. That's the money that that was paid.
All right, so they each got paid $35,000 for the year doing this.
Okay, there you go.
Right, on average. So there you go. Not too bad for what's your upfront cost?
Nothing. The camera, the phone,
roaming the city, and the camera. And I assume that you probably don't have to go very far to find people just idling in the city. Again, infrastructure is an issue as to why that's happening. I am sure behavior, a routine, right? People are just like used to sitting in front of someone's window for 20 minutes and doing whatever they're doing other than their job. There's probably a lot to it. I could probably think of a few ways to address it that may cost the city some money, but it would be a more systemic solution than deputizing en masse your entire population. Thankfully, only 20 people are doing it because
they picked up the majority of the money, but there's more people doing it. In fact, the listener did intimate that there have been quite a few fistfights over the videotaping.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're in public domain, but
yeah, but still, of course.
Yeah, it is what it is. But I still don't agree with the bounties. I don't know. That is not commentary, by the way, on the plight of the community. That is not a commentary on that listener and what they are going through and whether or not it should be handled. It is only a commentary that this is probably not at least the solution I would choose.
Yeah, I hear that. I remain neutral, which is a terrible place to be, but I'm not sure.
Good luck with that.
Well, I think that it makes sense given the resources of the city to maybe do this. But at the same time, is that all New York can muster? Really? That's all they can do? Oh, poor New York. Such a poor I'm doing
city.
A Ford party. I'm saying
such a poor city. Well, how's that police department? I'm sure they got funding somewhere.
They could spend less money on that, but then people start complaining about the crime. So can't have it both ways.
Like the crime of idling.
Well, I mean, it's a perception. It's not real, but that's the way that the cookie crumbles when it comes to
poor New York doesn't have enough money. Deputize the citizens.
All our cities could use a lot more funding. So let's not say that that's not necessary. But anyway, go on.
My thing is thinking about this. You always think about infrastructure, right? It always comes up. I mean, you just drive anywhere and everyone's like infrastructure because this place is crumbling, and this place meaning the country. Yeah. And I'm just kind of wondering, has anyone ever put together all of the reasons? Maybe they have. Maybe that's exactly what like Pete Buttigieg or the transportation secretaries of every administration do. Here's all the reasons why infrastructure is impacting our country and our communities. And maybe one of them is, and trucks have to idle. But that kind of thing is there that? And to say, listen, you got trucks idling, you got blah, 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 blah. We need spaces, just like buses have, like spaces that trucks can pull into that are more frequently accessible throughout communities so that they have a designated area to go to, like a truck stop, that version in a city, rather than them idling in front of some apartment building and polluting the environment in terms of where the kids are and the families are and the people are in general.
Do I believe that there's a plan for that somewhere in the federal government? Absolutely. But in order for that to be enacted, it needs to be taken up on the city level or the state level, because I think the governor controls a large portion of what can and can't happen within the city of New York as well. So there's a lot of bureaucracy that keeps someone having a really good idea on the federal level, creating a really interesting plan, and then actually having that plan enacted when it gets down to the local level. That's the problem. They can't just pull rank like Eisenhower and just build international highways throughout America. It has to.
One of those reasons just has to be defense.
Exactly. That's
it.
Well, defense. Well, it should be.
We could park a truck there, a B-2 bomber. Something can go there.
It doesn't have to be that explicit. You could simply say having a healthy population in and of itself is a level of defense. You could go a number of different ways. So a population that isn't suffering from emphysema, you could also say is defensive. Having a healthy population.
You just recruit younger before that sets in.
Or you could take that line. There you go. There's always a way around it, which is why nothing gets done. There's always a way around it. We're sending robots now anyway, so who cares how healthy the population is?
Yeah,
that's all I had. I just wanted to put that out there so that we covered our bases with regard.
God, it's even worse than I thought. I mean, it was bad enough when it was 10 minutes. Now it's 1 to 3, and again, it's like protect the kids. Honestly, protect the kids. I have nothing against that, but do it in the right way.
You're saying we could. It's easier to protect the kids if you actually shore up their future.
Yeah,
they're like having an environmental future over the minutia of making sure their lungs are. There's tons of different emissions that come.
You have demand in the city, and you didn't build roads that could accommodate the people that are delivering it. I mean, it's just unfair. It just sounds unfair, and I'm not. I'm not that I'm against corporations or anything. Like I know we usually rail on them for various reasons, but I mean, that's just not fair, right? Or am I not looking at that right? I mean, what do you expect them to do? And again, I'm going under the assumption that they're idling to operate,
which they usually are. I'm sure that the sandwich eater is not the average.
So let's just go. Well, how do you, that? It's not fair. Right.
Well, it's not fair. Look, I do agree with you there. This is part of the city problem. A city wants money, so they want to give a corporate entity, they want commercial space so that they could, I guess, tax it. But anyway, but they don't do enough planning around it. So trucks need to go and get service. They need to service that new window shop, what have you. But there's no place for them to park. So you're right. I mean, that's a city problem. You can't just say I need commercial space without investing the amount of money, without going down the line of all the things that you need in order to support it. And that's always the problem with New York, is that New York does things and doesn't go all the way. They go a quarter of the way, and then problems, inevitably crop up because it's not thorough. So yeah, there you go.
It is an interesting thing, though. I mean, I wonder how much of it is, just park there, but turn the car off. You don't need the car running. You don't need the truck running while you're doing whatever you're doing. Now, if you're there to pick up your kid in front of the school, I empathize with that. You can't have the car 100 degrees or 30 degrees, whether it's just you or you and the kid that's about to join you. So you kind of need to leave the car running. And unfortunately, kids don't understand this new bounty law, and they may take longer than a minute to get out. So, and I'm assuming that's picking up your kids or not using transportation. So I get that. Now, if you're saying, no, those aren't parents, silly. Those are just people that are parking in front of these schools that are polluting the playground, and they have nothing to do with the school. That's just where they decided to idle. Again, I have to ask, why are they there? What are they don't. I think there's just some nuance to it that it's really hard to say. Again, no one can do it.
I mean, I don't know how to get into a long history of New York story here. I'm going to try to give an incredibly abbreviated version of just the kind of ill planning that goes into the city. At some point in the 1800s, when the city was building a number of its brownstones throughout Manhattan and Brooklyn, they consulted with like a city planner, and I may not be getting the story completely right in terms of the parties involved, but basically the city planner, instead of actually speccing out the various lots that needed to occur in order to have the proper amount of brownstones within whatever the city block radius is for wherever they were being built throughout the city, they took a sale lot and used that as the blueprint in order to build each building in brownstone. And that is why if you go to another city, like let's say you go to Paris, when it comes to trash, there's usually space between each building that is dedicated for where you can put refuse. That way it's off of the sidewalks, it's out of the way, and it's not basically messing up the air of every passerby that happens to walk by that building, because there's a specific place where trash can go. If anyone's ever wondered in New York City why the trash is always on the street, this is why. Because New York City never planned, the entire city planning never, and it did not make accommodation for where you would put trash. It just built buildings without any kind of thing to say where are you going to put the trash. So the trash to this day is on the street. That's why if you're running, you get hit with a wall of stink in the summer if you go out on trash day, because there's just nowhere else to put the trash.
Feels like a metaphor. Feels like a metaphor for just the country and the population classes in general.
Sure. So I'm just saying that I have no doubt in my mind that the exact same thing has happened here. Why is a truck idling / half blocking traffic next to a storefront? Because whoever decided to make it a commercial area had never thought about how goods travel to those specific areas. They just had never put thought into it.
The solution is to put a bounty on them. So
the solution is to penalize
the logic here
exactly
is that every business that puts its trash on the street, you can sue them.
Yeah, that would be about the same thing. Yeah, and because the city itself never made any kind of like inroads into how you would supervise the trash situation.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's essentially what exactly. That's exactly the kind of situation that you'd be dealing with. A bounty on where you can put the trash,
and it's
for a city that provided no area to put trash.
Doing the whole thing. It's doing the whole thing to the community. Yeah. It smells and all of that. They should put bounties on businesses that put their trash on the street.
You could do that. That's a good way to make money, because the business will have no other recourse but to there's nowhere else to put it, because that's the way the city was designed.
Yeah.
So that's a little light New York City story. You should actually look up the real history of it, because it is a fascinating story that involves a couple of different like hemming and hawing in terms of how they were going to put all this infrastructure into place. But that's the crux of it. At the end of the day, they used a lot for sale blueprint as opposed to an actual structural blueprint for designing a city. So that's why the trash is on the street. Anyway,
cool. Good story.
Jamie, where can they find us?
Don't forget, we have a new YouTube content on Wednesdays and the weekend. Please show us that you care. Engage us on Twitter at Retraction Media, and listen to full episodes on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, and more.
And with that, dear listeners, Retraction out.